All right, so hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee with SamPaul. I'm very privileged to be in Brunswick, Victoria today, having a chat to my guest here, Tony, aka Jack the Bear, and we're at his studio, which is Deluxe Mastering.
That's right.
And we're going to have a bit of a chat about what he does here, and also you're a bit of an advocate for mental health and sort of well-being, I suppose you could say.
Well, I think saying I'm an advocate's a bit generous.
Okay.
but it's something that I have a passion for, and I do talk about, and certainly talk about my own struggles with it from time to time online. But no, I mean, it's very kind of you to call me that, because I think when I think of advocate, I think someone who's basically committed full time every day, and while so I'm not strictly speaking an advocate.
Okay.
But I certainly have an interest in it, and I'm certainly willing to share my stuff, with other people for those who are having issues with with their own journey with it.
Most definitely. That's where I've sort of picked up from it. I follow you obviously you on social media, and I know you do speak very openly about your own things and offer some, I guess you could say, some really good tips that I find very useful for myself, and
thanks, mate.
I see the engagement that other people get from that. So I guess a good place to start because there's a lot of people that probably know your work in a sense, but maybe don't know you personally. Like people that listen to music on the radio and the ARIA charts and things like that. How did you kind of get started in this line of work?
Well, my start was the most common line I have been using for years now is that mastering found me, as opposed to because when I had aspirations of getting into music as a teenager, I wanted to be a producer and a mixing engineer, because that's all I really knew.
Yeah.
And didn't really know what mastering was until I went my first trip to New York and saw a mastering studio for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And the thing that really struck me straight away was the speed of the job, that it didn't, unlike mixing, which could take hours or days. And tracking could definitely be weeks and sometimes months to work on a record.
Definitely.
Mastering was only took a little bit of time, and as someone who has ADD, that was very appealing to me, because my ability to focus, and over the years it's just become worse and worse. So I like the idea that I could just have a very short period of time to focus on a track. It also meant it gave me a variety of things to work on.
Yeah.
And also there wasn't as much competition for people to do mastering, because it didn't have the prestige and profile that things like producing and mixing have.
Yeah.
Even to this day, even with all the social media exposure and forums and everything else that's out there, we're so much more informed about it. I still find people get the terms confused, and I still get asked to mix people's album. But that's okay. The advantage of that is that I made a pragmatic decision to go into it, because there were so many people competing for the mixing and mastering spots, and hardly anyone knew about mastering, or the mixing and production spots rather. Hardly anyone knew anything about mastering. And so for me, I didn't get into this to become a rock star or to receive any profile at all. I just wanted to find my way doing something in music that was going to, just keep a roof over my head and food in my belly. And so for me, that just seemed to work, and that's why I say
definitely
it found me. And even to this day, I still don't find a lot of people that necessarily want to go down the path of mastering specifically as a career path, but that's just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you there. Like, I've found that myself because as you know, I've studied audio engineering a little bit myself, and I reckon of all the people that I studied with, I think one guy actually was going to be a mastering engineer. The rest of them all wanted to be the rock star, producers and things like that. But it's definitely something that's needed in the industry. I mean, it's what gives the little shine, I guess, at the end of the day, doesn't it? Really? Yeah,
it does. Although mastering is going through a very interesting time right now.
Okay.
Where it's still relatively healthy, and of course, as someone who has his own business, it's easy for me to say, well, it's required, but it's like with a lot of other things, it's evolved and technology's changed, and we've seen now more and more people becoming more self-sufficient with mastering. I mean, a lot of my clients do their own.
Yep.
And so they'll come to me when they have a specific release that they want to, they want to put out and put a little bit of extra effort, or there's a bit of money to be spent. AI now certainly coming in and starting to make impact. It hasn't necessarily impacted on me negatively, but it's still making an impact on the industry as a whole. And I wonder, I mean, no one really knows what the future holds, but if I was going to have a bet right now, I wouldn't be surprised if mastering almost falls by the wayside, and we see mixing and mastering merging together and becoming a joint thing. I mean, we're seeing now already for years now people doing stem mastering. And
that's right.
So that's kind of a quasi mix and mastering at the same time. So and I'm not a big fan of it myself. But I'm a bit more of a purist, but a lot of people do it. They do it well. They're successful at it. So, it's all good for me to be a crusty old, grumpy old bloke who's, waving his fist and telling people, get off my lawn, you crazy kids. But the reality is, things are changing, and to try and pretend that I'm going to hold back the tide just by using the palms of my hands, I'm pretty delusional. But things have changed, and things are changing.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of being an old crusty dude, but like the fact that you're aware of what's going on, like I think that's very healthy. No matter how old we get, if we're still aware of particularly if it's the industry we're in, it's a very healthy way to look at things. So
and it's no good pissing and moaning about it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you've got to either keep up with the trends, or you got to find a way to bring value to people that AI doesn't bring, or that the STEM mastering situation doesn't necessarily bring. So, awareness certainly helps.
Definitely.
But look, even back in the day when there were steam engines, the best steam engine engineers and designers became extinct at some point.
Yeah, true.
So, by the time I'm well and truly out of it, hopefully there'll still be some semblance of it while I'm around, but
yeah, most definitely.
Who's to know?
Well, that's right. I know no one knows the future, but I must admit, for me, I'm looking at some of the you mentioned AI before, and some of the aspects of AI and what it is capable of doing, kind of scares me a little bit. You can they're creating songs now using like samples from somebody's voice, and it sounds, not too bad. Like obviously it's early days, but you can just see where it's going. That eventually they could write a Michael Jackson song. It'll sound like Michael Jackson, but he had nothing to do with it. For example.
That's exactly right. And I think the way they're going to get around it legally is what they're saying now with ChatGPT or any kind of AIs. I mean, people can say, write me a song in the style of Michael Jackson, so it's not a rip-off, so to speak. Or mix me a record in the style of Chris Lord-Alge. Master me a record in the style of Bob Ludwig. So, the AI has got all this data stored up of all this information from, how many years now. And so it's going to be able to find its way and through its own algorithm work out something that's going to fit the request, and become incredibly close, if not exact, but still so incredibly close, but close enough so that it doesn't impinge on anyone's intellectual property. And that's where it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, when it comes to, like you were saying, very close to, I mean, at the end of the day, it only has to be pretty close. Most people will be happy with that. I mean, you look at, for example, I watched a documentary called The Distortion of Sound, and they're talking about how we spend all this money in a studio and then mastering it to get this product, and then we're putting it on a streaming service, which is like 128K MP3 or, something like that. And people are happy with that because they've got the convenience of putting it in their ears and walking around. And,
But you know what? But even in the context of on streaming at 128K, a well produced, recorded, mixed and mastered track is going to sound a lot better than something that's done in a less than ideal situation. That sounds really humble. So there's still going to be a difference that you appreciate, albeit that the final product, its resolution isn't all that great. But a lot of people, you're right, and especially Gen Y, Gen X, the younger generation, are coming up listening to music on that format. I mean, this is their playback device.
Yeah.
And so you only know what you know until you are introduced to something better. I see it with my own son, my youngest boy Andreas, and again, he's a product of the the streaming generation, and MP3s and whatnot. But when I sat him down and say, hey, listen, have a listen to that, and then have a listen to this, and he can really definitely appreciate difference. And so now he's starting to want to explore higher res, higher quality sources for himself.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's very cool. It's good, and with a father like yourself, you obviously can expose him to sort of to a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, for example, my son is 11, so he's growing up very much in the streaming digital generation. Had no idea what vinyl was, but because I've come from a background DJing vinyl, he's getting exposed to it, and now like he's sitting there playing with the turntable, winding it back and speeding it upside down. And I jokingly said to him once, I said, try doing that on Spotify, and he just looked at me and laughed, So now I also am aware that you do a podcast. So are you back doing that?
No, the podcast has had a sabbatical for a while.
Okay.
I may or may not get back to it. I'm struggling to find people to do editing. I tried to video edit, man. People tell me it's easy, and it's like,
it's not easy.
iMovie, and I don't think it's that easy.
No.
I think you need to be wired a certain way to be able to do it, or understand things a certain way. I'm no matter how many times I've tried, no matter how many YouTube tutorials, no matter how many times I sat down with people who want to show me step by step, I still struggle with that. And if you're not making money on a podcast and you're just constantly, because editors are not cheap.
No.
They're not cheap. And I can understand why, because they bring there's a certain skill set they're bringing. There's time involved, even if you're doing something in the simplest kind of thing. No matter how basic and simple it is, it's still quite involved. And so right now I'm just putting the podcast on hold. It's been on hold for a while.
Yeah.
As to whether it comes back.
Yeah, I did remember. I did remember you saying you'd put it on hold. I wasn't sure if you'd come back with it or not, but
No, the couple of false starts.
Oh, okay.
But we never got an episode out to air. I mean, whatever I've done is still there.
Yeah.
And I guess will remain there for posterity. But don't at this stage. I have no immediate plans to bring it back.
So you've obviously had quite a long career as a mastering engineer. Is there anything that stands out as like a highlight? I know we were discussing off camera the Tim Rogers album that's just come out. You had a bit of a hand in that one.
Yeah, well, and that was nice. I think there's always those little moments where you get a Guerns on a record and the record does well, and that's all really nice. I'm always aware that a record is successful because it's a good song. And no amount of mixing or production or mastering is going to take an ordinary song and turn it into a great song. And so many ducks need to line up for you to make it work. I mean, it's all good having a good song, well produced, well mixed, well mastered, but then you got to have the marketing gods work in your favour. That someone's good on the social media, know how to manipulate the social media algorithms well, and a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
And then something will happen. But ultimately, Johnny Punchclock is purchasing or listening to streaming the song. That's what it's about. And if you're lucky enough. So for me, I don't think I've ever been one for seeing my success or any success because of a record doing well or got. These things are great, of course, and they do help.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie and say that these things aren't great events to happen and great achievements, because again they build a certain perception in the public eye that so and so worked on that record. I like that style, so it can work for you. But it's when you chase that and when you attribute your self-worth to those successes, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So to try and answer your question, is the highlight is really just the fact that I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And that I have an opportunity to work with clients and help musicians with their tunes and get to do a job that is something I really love doing.
Yeah.
and that's the aim of the game. Where 5% of people in the world are unhappy with the job that they're doing.
Most definitely.
And so to be able to be in that very small minority of people who genuinely love what they do, don't give a fuck that it's Monday, will work, they don't look at the clock when they're working, they're just happy to be doing it. And even if they're having a challenging day and things aren't going all that great, I would rather have one of those than the perfect day, in a cubicle or standing on a retail floor or nothing wrong with those, nothing wrong with those jobs. I've had to do plenty of those things along the way as I built my business. But in a full-time context, give me a rough day here than a perfect day doing something I really don't particularly want to be doing.
No, that's definitely, to me, that's the epitome, in my opinion, of success, doing something that you enjoy and making it a career. I'm going to very quickly just give a shout out to Grow Clothing, Melbourne-based clothing company who have given me some nice clothes to wear when I do my show. And of course, thank you so much,
pleasure, bro,
my man, for taking the time out to have a chat.
No worries, man. Thanks for coming down
making
today.
Me feel welcome in your beautiful studio. And
you're very welcome, brother.
Thank you so much.
Nice. Thank you, man.
All right, man.
All right. See you guys.